Hi there and welcome back to another episode of my Beginner Gardener series. Today we're going to be talking all about watering. This is one of the most difficult things for beginner gardeners to get the hang of, and it can make or break a garden if you don't get it right. In this video we're going to be covering watering frequency, different ways to water, what happens when it rains, and when's the best time to water. Let's get into it. Okay, let's start with when is the best time of day to water. So the first thing to make note of is that if the best time to water doesn't work for you, then the most important thing to do is just to make sure that you water versus don't water at all. Plants require water in order to grow, so do make sure that regardless of whether you can do it at the right time or not, that you are watering no matter what. With that being said, the morning is the best time to water your plants. And this is for a couple of reasons. So the first is that you're giving them access to water before the heat of the day comes, because they can take up water faster in the morning than they can during the high heat of the day. It allows time for the water to evaporate before nighttime, because if your plants stay wet at night, it can promote fungal issues. It also means that there's less water evaporating during the daytime, so you aren't wasting any water. So what happens when you water in the middle of the day is two things. Is one, that the water is going to evaporate faster than the plants can take it up, so therefore you are wasting some of your water that you're paying for. And the other thing is that in the heat of the day, the plants can't take up water as fast as they can in the morning or the evening, so they aren't getting quite as much water into their systems as they could be if you watered in the morning. And again, watering at any time of day is better than not watering at all. And so the reason that you don't water in the evening is because if your plant leaves do get wet, it can promote fungal pathogens. So it's better to water in the morning if you have the time available to you. So the next thing to talk about is watering frequency, and this is the trickiest one of all. So frequency depends on how you're watering, how the weather is in your area, and how you are growing your plants, such as in containers or in ground. Plants that are grown in containers tend to need to be watered more frequently than plants that are grown in ground. This is assuming that your summer is hot and dry. If you are getting excessive rain in the summer, that's a different story. So plants that are grown in plastic containers tend to hold more water in them than fabric containers, so you do need to know the material of your pot and how well it drains. If you're growing in terracotta is well known to wick up moisture, so your plant can dry out faster as well. So the best way with knowing how frequently to water your plants in containers is to know what your weather is like, such as if it's really dry or if it's raining frequently. And similar to houseplants, you do want to stick your finger into the soil, and if the first couple of inches feel dry, I recommend watering it. So if you're growing in the ground or in raised beds, you do want to water less frequently to help promote the roots growing deeper. Also, some plants have shallower roots than others, so it's helpful to know which plants have deep roots and which ones have shallow roots, but it's best to water deeply and less frequently to allow your plants to extend that root system in order to handle droughts better. So if your summer is a really hot summer and you are not getting much rain, I'm talking 30 degrees Celsius or higher, you are going to want to water more frequently. So this is going to be anywhere from daily to every second day. If you're going through a heat wave where you're seeing the humidity and the heat above 40 degrees, then you're likely going to have to water every single day. If you are getting temperatures of heat this high, I really recommend covering your garden in shade cloth. That includes all your heat-loving plants as well. And this will help lower the evaporation so you don't have to water as frequently, because if the heat is that high and you are not getting a lot of rainfall, I'm assuming that water is in short supply in a lot of areas, so you do want to make sure that you're following water conservation methods. If your season is dry but you're seeing temperatures anywhere from 20 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius, then you don't need to water as frequently. You can get away with watering every 3 days. And depending on how well rooted your plants are, you can probably go up to 4, 5, 6 days. what you can do is you can try and water less frequently and see how your plants react to it and adjust your schedule. If your plants are looking droopy in the morning or the evening, it means that they are thirsty, so you do want to water them regardless of the time of day. However, if your plants are looking droopy in the middle of the day between noon and 2 p.m. when it's at its hottest, that doesn't mean that your plants are thirsty, but they could actually just be losing water faster than they can take it up because it's hot out. So you really want to wait until the sun sets or they go into shade to see how your plant leaves are looking. Having your plants looking for water in the ground is a much better way versus watering them regularly, because then you can never go on vacation and they're always relying on you. So if you wanted to start by watering your garden every 5 or 6 days and seeing how they handle it, you can manage that, and then you might only have to water every 5 days. But if they do look like they're thirsty, reduce it down to every 3 or 4 days and see how they react then. If your season is getting consistent rainfall every 2 or 3 days where you get a really good solid rain, then you're probably not going to have to water your garden at all that year. The one tricky thing is that if it rains a lot in June and July, but it's dry in August, you have to make sure that you are following the weather and notice that it has stopped raining, and that you'll have to get into the habit of watering your garden. We've had years where we got a ton of rain here in Ottawa, and then when it finally dries out, I've forgotten to water my garden because I wasn't used to watering it all season. And then I started realizing that and had to get back into the habit again. So it's a lull you can fall into, so just be mindful of that. If it is raining consistently every 2 or 3 days, check on your pots. If you're growing in plastic pots, they could be drowning, so it's really important that you check on them and make sure that you move them into a covered area and make sure that the pot has really good drainage, because you don't want to drown any of your plants that don't have access to proper drainage, such as ones in the ground or in raised beds. So all of these things that I said are a guideline and not a rule. It's really dependent on how you're growing, such as in pots that are plastic or fabric, in raised beds, in ground, how the temperature is, how hot out it is, how cold it is. Like, there's so many factors that affect the watering, which is why it makes it so difficult. But everything that I mentioned here are guidelines that you can use to help you get a better idea of how frequently to water. Another important item to note is that some plants are thirstier than other plants are, and these are the ones that have shallow roots. So the top 1 to 2 inches of soil are always the first to dry out, and so any plant that has shallow roots will get thirsty before the rest of them. And so one way that you can deal with this is by planting your thirsty, shallow-rooted plants together, so that way you can water them at a different rate than all of your other plants. Or else you can know which plants need water before the others, and you can directly water at the base of those plants at a different frequency than the rest of your garden. So thirsty, shallow-rooted plants include cucumbers, lettuce, brassica such as broccoli, corn, spinach, onions, and leeks, to name a few. So another important thing you can do to your garden is adding mulch. Mulch is an incredible thing to do with your garden. It can help with pest control, it can help with weed control, but it also can help with water control. So by adding mulch to your garden, you can stop the evaporation from the soil a lot faster, and this way you don't have to water as frequently because the mulch is going to slow down that evaporation. Another option you can do is add in drip irrigation. This is my favorite way to water my garden. There are companies online that are totally affordable, and you can create a drip irrigation system that is unique to your garden. And what you do is you install it, and these small lines of wire will be on the garden, and they slowly drip water at the base of your plants. So you can either set up your irrigation system to match where you planted your plants, or you can install your irrigation system first and plant where each of the drain holes are on your system. And what it will do is it will drip water at the base of your plant to make sure that you are getting water exactly where you need it to without evaporation. The fun thing about drip irrigation is you can buy a water timer that attaches to your house, and you can set it up to water 2 or 3 times a week for a certain time period. I had mine go off at 7 o'clock in the morning, 3 days a week for 15 minutes. and I loved being able to hear it from inside the house. My garden was being watered without me having to do any work, so I loved having that. The one thing with drip irrigation is you do want to make sure that about once a week you are giving your entire garden a really good watering, and that's to make sure that your soil stays alive, because of course soil is a living atmosphere full of bugs and fungi, and so you do want to make sure that your soil is getting watered to help keep them all alive. So once a week I would go out there and just give a really good deep water to my entire garden and all of the soil. And doing that allows you to get out there and really be close with your plants and pick weeds and prune where you need to. And so the drip irrigation saves you a lot of time during the week. And then whenever you have time that one day a week, you can really give your garden a good water. So one thing you might notice if you don't water consistently is certain fruit and vegetables will grow into weird shapes. So cucumbers is a perfect example where you might see one side that's attached to the plant is a nice big round cucumber, and the other side is this weird little thin curl, and that is a sign of inconsistent watering, because cucumbers, of course, their fruit is made up mostly of water, and so when they aren't getting enough of it, they'll continue to grow. They'll just grow in weird ways and provide water to the fruit wherever they can. And so if you do get any cucumbers that are misshapen, that's a good idea that you aren't watering frequently enough. So my final recommendation with watering is to set up a rain barrel. So as far as I know in Canada, there are no issues with collecting rainwater. However, it doesn't hurt to check your rules in your municipality to make sure that catching rainwater is legal. We have 4 rain barrels here. I have a 1,000 liter tote and then 3 normal size rain barrels. So we make sure to catch as much as we can. You want to set them up early in the spring because April showers, but make sure that the temperature never is dropping below 0 for a long period of time, because if you do have water in your barrels, they will crack the barrels, and you do need to empty them in the fall and store them somewhere. However, collecting rain means that you get to water your garden for free. And so this is a really great way of being able to water during droughts. So as long as you still have water in your rain barrels, you can water during the droughts, and you don't have to worry about using city water for your garden. And on top of it all, there's so many nutrients in rainwater that is really good for your garden. And so by using this rainwater, you are feeding your plants nutrients from the rain, and you're saving yourself money at the same time. So I highly recommend it. I'll put in the comment section below 2 different ways that you can find rain barrels. And if you do buy them, just make sure that they are food safe. That's very important. You don't want to buy anything that had chemicals in it that is unsafe for you to be spraying on your food. And that's everything for today's episode about watering. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like it and subscribe for more videos just like this. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye. You're so goofy.